I'm honored to welcome Watch Over Me director FARIDA PACHA and cinematographer LUTZ to this virtual encounter. I am LIANI MAASDORP and I'm a lecturer in the Center for Film and Media Studies at the University of Cape Town. This film appears at the festival courtesy of the Embassy of Switzerland in South Africa and Swiss Films. FARIDA, LUTZ, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us after the first screening of Watch Over Me at Encounters. Palliative care includes pain management and treatment of symptoms in patients with serious or terminal illness. Though a distinction is made in some parts of the world between palliative and hospice care, here in South Africa and I believe in India, palliative care encompasses making patients as comfortable as possible in the last weeks or days of their lives. Facing death is a frightening and complex challenge that we all will face one day. FARIDA, people are at their most vulnerable. How did you approach the conversation with the patients you filmed, and how did you ensure that you had informed consent from them and their families? FARIDA, you'll just have to unmute, please.
Yeah, so we approached them through the team first. So the palliative care team, when they received the first phone call, because they have never met the family of the patient before, would ask on the phone if it was okay if a team came with them, and they would briefly explain what we were doing, that we making film on palliative care on their work, and if it was okay if the team came and filmed the visit. So it was only when that first consent was given. I mean, as you can imagine, most people said no, but there were always a few who said yes. And we went there, and when we entered, I would briefly explain what we were doing, and we would film the visit. And then at the end of the visit, I would go into much more detail, and I would explain what we were doing, what our aim was, and that we would like to come every time that the team visited. And it only when they consented would we go back, of course. It was always amazing to me how generous people are, even in the most fragile moments of their life. They really were extremely generous, and they never ever stopped us. I mean, we went visit after visit after visit, and I mean, what you see is just a fraction of these visits. So it was over a long time that we visited them, and so it became part of their, in a way, their world at that time.
Yes, and I understand that you spent about 3 years producing this film. LUTZ, it must have been very tricky and at times actually quite uncomfortable or even painful to film the last days of people's lives and to see their families' grief. What did you as the DOP do to find a balance between respecting patients' dignity and their space and getting the beautiful shots that we see in the film?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not an easy task at all, because I mean, every time we went to visit a patient and a family in a situation like this, it had an effect on us too, a very deep emotional effect too. And of course, at every instant that we were there, I was asking myself, is this okay what I'm doing here? I mean, is this bearable for them? Is this bearable for myself? Mm-hmm. And yeah, you have to balance that, and you have to feel also the consent, the readiness of everybody in the room to be accompanied the way I was trying to accompany them. I was trying to be as uninvasive as possible. I had a very small camera. I preferred a very small and unobtrusive camera for that purpose, handheld all the time, so not much gear. Basically, the camera was an extension of my arm, and I was trying to move as gently and as smoothly as possible in order not to counter the effect that I was the white elephant in the room. So, but I've always felt that I was accepted from the very start as being part of this, and never felt uncomfortable about
it. Sorry, Farida, would you like to add to that?
No, I mean, I just wanted to say that, you know, we were filming in these very cramped rooms, very small rooms, and there would be the patient plus the family members and the palliative care team, and there were 3 of us, including the sound recorders. And the sound recorders, of course, had a long boom rod with the boom mic. And so we were not inconspicuous, in no way were we inconspicuous. But it didn't really matter to them that we were there and we were filming them. They had accepted it, and they had, you know, they were comfortable with it. That's just what we felt when we were there.
I'm going to relay the audience questions, unless somebody raises their hand, in which case we're going to ask the Wonderful Encounters technical team to unmute them so that they can share their question with you live. The first question is from K2 Kasonkola. Such a beautiful and honestly beautiful film. Thank you for it. What drew you to this topic?
Well, I went through a similar experience myself. I took care of my sick parents for 6 years, and I didn't have any palliative care help. I mean, I didn't even know it existed at the time, even in a city like Bombay, where I was living. So, I mean, years later, when I came across this organization just through a news article, I thought I would like to investigate this further, and I would like to know what exactly they do and what this means. And that's when it started the journey. Yeah.
Yes, amazing. Studies have shown that the majority of people prefer to spend the last days of their lives at home. However, I know that the number of South Africans with advanced illnesses who die in hospitals exceeds the accepted Western norms, like in the US, UK, Australia, and palliative care has been recognized by the World Health Organization as a global health priority. But as our audience saw in the film, there's a title towards the end of the film that says that only 1% of those in need of palliative care in India receives it. I see there's another question. This is such a difficult and vital topic. I was wondering what kind of impact you envision or hope for extending from this film. And I guess if I can just add another question to that, because I think that the two relate to each other very nicely, is what your aims were going into the film, into the production, and then your aims now, whether you think that your film can be used to effect change around this issue.
Absolutely. I think, well, one is that I wanted, and I hope that this will at least start a conversation about death and dying in our cultures, because I think we tend to avoid the subject. Nobody really wants to talk about it. Even doctors, when they are giving a prognosis, will not, you know, even say the word. I know in my own experience that this word was never uttered in 6 years between me or my parents. So, you know, I know that. And I think it's time to change that. And I think it's time to, so that at least the end or the last months, the last weeks pass in the way that the person would like it to go. I think that's very important. Most of the time, family members panic and rush the person to the hospital. And maybe that's not always the best way forward. And one is that. And the other thing, I really think that we need to change the healthcare models that our countries have. And I think this is very, very urgent that palliative care becomes part of the healthcare policy. You know, it should not be left to a few NGOs who are dependent on the donations of private donors in order to give this service. I think it should be the right of every person to have access to palliative care. And I think that it should be a subject in medical school. How can you go through 5-6 years of medical education and never discuss palliative care? And I think this needs to change.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. We were talking before the Q&A officially started, and you know, at South African state hospitals, in many hospitals, there isn't a palliative care specialist, not even a palliative care nurse. And so the doctors, the medical officers and the specialists working in particular fields like surgery or oncology, they are responsible for the palliative care for those patients in hospital. LUTZ, the film is not only moving, but it's absolutely gorgeous to look at. I'm curious about the decision to render the film in black and white.
Well, we discussed this very early on. I mean, we were not 100% sure about it when we started shooting, but we shot for about a day or two, looked at the rushes, then turned off the color and said, yes, that's the way we're going to shoot this film. For a reason, or for several reasons actually, but the main reason being that it immediately makes the film or the image much more focused on what is going on underneath, I mean, what it is about, and less about it, less what does it look like, you know? So it really cuts to the core of the situation and of the topic. That is what we found. And another thing that, of course, helped us a lot was that, I don't know whether you've ever been to Indian homes. I guess they are similar to African homes. They're very colorful and with very stark colors, which can also be quite distracting because, I mean, we were shooting the situation as it was. We did not prepare anything. We did not change anything. We basically entered the room and the visit with the camera rolling and would just document what was there and what was going on. So black and white also helped to cope with sometimes with the lighting situation and with a set that would otherwise have been very distracting. And yeah. So there was a multiple benefit from that.
I see we have another audience question again from K2 Kasankola. I sincerely hope that I'm not butchering your name. So K2 asks, for FARIDA, having had to care for your parents and then being witness to such hardships, did this affect you psycho-emotionally? And what did you do to take care of yourselves, both of you, emotionally?
Of course, it did have an impact, I think, and it had also, I think, it left me with a lingering sense of guilt, like I hadn't done enough, you know. But I think working on this film also now made me realize what could have been different. So but I mean, I must say that I thought I had turned a corner in my grieving process and that I could handle this, but I think I underestimated what a toll it would actually take. The filming on me, but also on notes, on the sound recorders, on Pratik and the other sound recorders who accompanied us, and also on the editor. It was a very difficult emotional experience also for the editor to edit this film. So yeah. I think when you, as a documentary filmmaker, when you put yourself in these sort of situations, I think you don't actually have enough tools in order to also protect yourself, you know. I think that should be also a discussion in the larger documentary industry, you know, about what can you do to also protect yourself. So yeah, we just coped with it the way we could, and also having, you know, being able to talk about it helps a lot too. So, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. No, of course it helps to talk about it. Although I must say, on one hand, yes, it does help. On the other hand, since we are not only professionally engaged, but also privately engaged, it basically never ends. You know, you shoot, you talk about what you have experienced, and then okay, but then it's still there. It's still there between you and when you come home and when you know, prepare lunch and you have a son, you have a child. You know, it's always there in the evening and the night and the morning. So yeah, it's heavy, but
But it helped.
In a way also rewarding, I must say.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and I was also justifying what we were doing because by saying, I think it is important that we deal with a matter like this. We have to deal with this subject. And I think it's important to give an audience an opportunity to do that. And it also, while shooting it, it also, in a way, I think it changed us towards
how we want
being more prepared,
you know, how we would want our last days to go, and also discussions on, you know, what happens to our son, all of that. I think we already had these discussions. So I think that's really good, I think, yeah.
Yeah, those are discussions that we so rarely have and that we really don't want to have. There's another question from the audience, but I wonder whether I can interject with a question of my own that touches on what Lutz was talking about before. Actually, I wanted to touch on what you were saying, Farida, about the care that we have to take as filmmakers. I think that when you are busy working on a film, there's so much driving you to do the production, to do it efficiently, successfully, beautifully, movingly, that you put your own emotional health on the back burner. And I think that there is an amount of trauma that you suffer that might only hit you later. And in a recent discussion with other documentary filmmakers, a couple of people were saying we actually need to start adding a line item for counseling in our documentary production budgets when we're dealing with sensitive subject matter.
That would be great, yeah, absolutely. That's very needed. Also because, as you say, you know, when you're working, it's like you're divided in two. Like, you know, there is one part of you that's all the time thinking about the film and what you need and what you have to do. And then there is another part of you that's emotionally reacting to what you're witnessing. So it's a very, you're split in two, you know.
Yeah, this makes me think of a moment in the film where somebody is called from sort of outside of the frame to help the gentleman on the roof to move to the shade. And immediately when I saw him, I thought, I wonder whether that's your sound recordist or whether that's a member of your crew.
No, it's just another person living in the building. They always pick people up because they get the best cell phone reception upstairs. So there were always some men trying to make calls, sometimes women, and then one of them.
Okay, there's always a helper around. Lutz, you mentioned before that, you know, you would enter each space with your camera already rolling, that you wouldn't do any set dressing, that you documented what you found as you found it. And that was something that really struck me in terms of your approach to the film, is that carries through from the filming through to the editing, the structure of the film. You know, you don't afford us the comfort and the luxury of explaining or setting up the setting. We have to deduce it from being with the people, being there. Were you at any point, you know, sort of pushed by an international producer to make it easier for an international audience to enter the story, to, you know, have a title card up front that says something about the NGO who offers this palliative care, or, you know, to frame each one of the patients?
No, we were not. I mean, the way we are producing is we skip the television commissioning editor part. Because we know we cannot cope with their demands. The film would not have been in black and white. It would have had all these, you know, explanations and guidelines, guardrails. We don't like them because we want to empower the audience. We want the audience to come up with their own explanations and their own conclusions. And therefore, yeah, we are all for an immersive and observational style. So because we really get the response that people are thankful for that, because they have forgotten that they can be part of the film by finding their way through it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it helps them experience somebody else's reality. You know, put yourself in someone else's shoes, I think. Which observational film, and I mean, it's just a form I'm really fond of and very comfortable with. And I think that in the end, you are really rewarded as a viewer because you have gone through it and you have, you invest yourself.
You have invested yourself, you have contributed to it.
Contributed to making sense of what you're seeing.
And for that, I think it will stay longer with you also. You won't forget it so easily because you have sweated it as an audience, the outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying this here now as a producer, in the comfort of a Swiss funding system that would allow independent film producing this way without having to compromise and without having to, bring a commissioning editor on board. I understand that this is a very privileged situation and that not everywhere in the world you will find this. But for us, this is the only way to do it, and therefore we're very happy and very grateful that we can.
Well, I certainly appreciated being invited into the meaning-making conversation in the film and not being spoon-fed, not being told what to think, and having to ask myself and you as the filmmakers very difficult questions as I watched the film. There's an anonymous or an attendee who prefers to remain anonymous who says, "Thank you for this sensitive and thought-provoking film. Please, can you talk a little bit about how your relationships developed with the various families who you filmed?"
So I think that when we went there, okay, I think we were in the first accepted also because we were with the palliative care team. So there really strong bond developed with the palliative care team and the family and the patient. And since we were always there with them, we became part of that bond, and even to the extent of like when we after the person had died and we even went for the condolence visit, it felt right, to be there with them. So, but I mean, I must say that there was, at least with the ones that you see in the film, there was never a moment where I felt, that they were uncomfortable or that I felt a discomfort, There have been cases that we were following which at some point asked us to stop. So this has happened, and usually they were much younger patients, and I think one of the concerns was also how they looked because they had changed, so much change in their way they looked, and they weren't at some point comfortable with that, and that was fair. We just stopped filming, and they're not part of the film. But I think with these families, it became very warm, very comfortable also.
Yeah, although we never spent any time outside the visits with them.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Basically, they saw us as often as they saw the team. So, yeah. We
never filmed them without the presence of the team. And we never even filmed the patient alone, ever. There's always been a family member or a palliative care team member always in the room. And the same way with the palliative care team, we never shot them outside of their working day. Don't have any private scenes at home or anything like that.
Yes, the final moments where we see them, the three of them are waiting or in different forms of transport heading home.
Going home.
Yeah, so sort of the boundary between that work life and the personal life. You mentioned to me before that you filmed about 20 different people, and ultimately we see 3 in the film. So, I guess in addition to those who said that they didn't want to be filmed anymore, there were also some difficult decisions, in production, in the edit, about who to include and who to leave out. What was it that appealed most to you about these 3 that you did include in the film?
3 cases, I think, because some of the cases, we shot 3 other ones or to the film, they are not in the film because 2 of them are very similar cases, so we have to choose also. And I thought, and for me, these 3 cases were really showed different aspects of the palliative care team's work, which for me was important. You know, in Hanif's case, it's all the hurdles and all the bureaucratic red tape that they have to overcome in order for him to be able to get that medicine which would save his life, you know. And I wanted to show that. I wanted to show how ridiculous this whole process is, you know. And his faceless people, sending them from one place to another. That was important. For the other two, it was for Meher Chand, the older man. It was the fact that he was not told.
Yes.
And that is so common in India, so common that families will not tell the person that they are dying. They will just not say it. And the doctors don't talk to the patient, they talk to the family. For LUTZ, it was really shocking because here in the West, your family would not be told anything. It would be only the patient would know. And only they have the right whether they want to tell somebody or not. But in India, it's the absolute reverse. And this was very important that you tell the person what is happening to them. It's important. So they make their decisions, you know. And for the other story with the woman, it was about letting go. It was about her being ready to die. She had accepted that, but it was about the children who had a really hard time letting go. So these were, I think, very different and important aspects of the work that they have to do with the patients and with their families.
Different challenges for them also to cope with.
And sadly, we are going to have to let go. I see we've come to the end of our time for this virtual engagement. Thank you so much, FARIDA and LUTZ, for taking the time out to be here with us. It's been such a pleasure. And thanks to everyone who joined us in the Zoom room and on Facebook and watched this Q&A live. You have just over 24 hours left to watch as many films as you possibly can. So get some coffee ready. There are many beautiful, moving, entertaining, shocking, striking films to choose from. But if you'd like to explore more of the themes raised in Watch Over Me, then may I suggest watching Dance Me to the End of Time, in which director Melanie Chait documents the last year of her partner's life. On that note, thank you so much, FARIDA. Thank you so much, LUTZ. In your full, we were talking before, your film it was released in January. It premiered in Switzerland in January this year. So we're very privileged to have the film when it's really very fresh and at the beginning of its festival life. And we wish you all the best for the rest of its festival life and the rest of its journey. And I really think that this film has incredible potential to shift people's perception and hopefully to also influence policy around palliative care. And I really do hope that you manage to take the film further and let the film do that work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you to all the audience, for watching the film and also for their questions. It's really wonderful, even if you're online, to actually get that response.
Absolutely. So it's sort of the best we can do in the virtual space, but it's really, thank you so much for everyone who is here who posed questions. And thanks to the Encounters team. Thanks Mandisa and Tara and Taryn and Daryl and Cry, the whole technical team behind the scenes. It's so wonderful doing these events with you. Take care, everyone. Sleep tight.
Bye.